Hi, my name is Brian Connors. I'm a alumni, as they say, of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. Never trust a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
Were you trying to get crazy with this thing? Don't you know I'm loco?
I want you to try to think back to when you were younger, let's say 7 or 8 years old. Now, I'd wager if you were like me, you probably had a fear of the dark. Now, not necessarily the dark itself, but what lurked in it. I think most children do have this innate foreboding about the things that lurk in the dark. We're freaked out by it when we're younger. What's in the closet? What's under the bed? What's that noise in the basement? Is there something lurking down there? We have this notion in our heads as kids that there's something there. There's some nefarious force that is studying us. And it's waiting for its opportunity to lash out and to hurt us in some way. And so we get freaked out by it, right, as little kids. Now, eventually you'll outgrow this, maybe with your family's help. I remember my father used to love fucking with me as a kid. We watched Nightmare on Elm Street. And his idea of getting me over my fear of the dark was just to scare the living shit out of me until nothing scared me anymore. So we watched this movie, and the next thing I know, about 2 or 3 hours after I go to bed, I start to hear this weird kind of clinking sound. Well, my door leads out to the hallway. There's this, a slight sliver of light that's kind of peeking through. And I look up, and what do I see? Knives. Knives just tapping in a rhythmic pattern on the door. And suddenly there comes a hand with knives attached to it, just like Freddy Krueger. Well, this is my father. He thinks this is fucking hysterical. I can't remember. I think the bed ended up becoming a waterbed that night because he scared the living piss out of me. But, eventually our parents find a way to regulate this. We outgrow it, whether that's through cruelty or we just simply grow up and we're not afraid anymore. There's no reason to be. Now imagine instead of actually outgrowing it, you never did. And instead of monsters, it's people. And it doesn't just happen in the dark anymore. No, there's a conspiracy afoot. There's a group of people, a network of people, and they're made up of all sorts of individuals, from the stranger down the road to your neighbor, maybe your best friend or a family member. These people, they communicate with one another, and their primary goal is to fuck with you. They want to drive you crazy. They want to ruin your life. And they're going to do that in any way they can. Maybe you're at the grocery store and you hear whispering and you look behind you and there are 2 or 3 people and they're talking to one another and they're looking right at you. They're pointing right at you. Maybe you're driving on the highway and suddenly you're flanked by cars. You can't speed up or slow down. You can't change lanes. They're all the same color. They're all going the same speed. Nothing's blocking them in. They're just shoehorning you in. So you can't get to where you need to go. You have to go with their traffic. Maybe when you're on the phone, suddenly you hear an awkward static. You can't really explain it. It's a new phone. It's got great reception. The batteries work. But for some reason, whenever you're having a conversation that you think is important, all of a sudden that static kicks on. Like maybe somebody's eavesdropping or trying to disrupt your communication. This is the mentality. This is the mindset of somebody who believes in the concept of gang stalking. Now, this is a relatively new phenomena. It's really exploded with the use of the internet. Not necessarily people thinking that they're victims of some kind of a conspiracy. That's been around forever. But the name and the parameters of what it is and the community built up around it, that's new. That's been, propagated and spread all over the internet. And all these people are getting sucked up into this idea that they're the victim of some vast conspiracy whose sole goal is to drive them fucking crazy. And so this really fascinated me. I wanted to try to get into the mindset of somebody who believed in this, who thought that there was a conspiracy that existed to drive them crazy. And so I started looking. I wanted to find a good representative of the type of person that buys into this idea. And I looked around and I came across somebody, God is Cool 2010. Now I should tell you, I've actually had to come back and re-edit this video because of something that's happened. In the course of making it, originally I was going to upload it a few days ago, I tried to contact the person who owns that account. Now I'm not sure if it's because I reached out to them to try to get a better understanding of what they think, or if it's some unrelated thing, but they closed the account down. It could be for a number of reasons, and I'll actually talk about what I think it might be at the very end, but it presented some problems. One, I lost a lot of the videos I wanted to use. The reason that God is Cool 2010 is such an interesting case is it shows what happens when you present a crazy idea to somebody who's already unstable mentally. if you were to look at the videos, the first videos he put up when he opened that account, what you would see is a man who is obviously dealing with some kind of a mental instability. Now, he's a very soft-spoken gentleman. He slurs his words. He might have a speech impediment, but there's nothing striking about him. There's nothing that you would look at him and you'd say, oh yeah, that guy's got a mental defect. Oh yeah, that guy's schizophrenic or depressed. He seems like a normal guy, and in those original videos, he looked like a normal guy. But over the course of the years that he had this account, it just went downhill. And the point that it started to go downhill is when he got introduced to gang stalking. And so I'm looking at this account, I'm watching these videos, and I'm like, holy shit, this is the perfect example to use for this sort of situation. And so now you can see my problem. I've lost a lot of these videos. Luckily, I was able to get the good ones, the ones that really kind of help, show the narrative of his descent into madness, so to speak. And it's his first video, and now I've shortened a lot of these for time. A few things you should know going into this. I'm not very good with audio editing. His videos have a lot of white noise, a lot of background noise, clicks and bangs. I can't edit that out. And so, they're going to sound a little off. Also, I'm going to leave them at their original resolution. I'm not going to try to stretch it or distort it. And to top it off, he has a very awkward way of editing his videos. I've tried to cut a lot of that out, but you'll see what I mean when you come across it, because it's hard to miss. So, again, a lot of these have been edited for time to try to keep this video under a fucking hour long, but we're going to take a look at his... This is the first video of his I saw, and it is the best example of if you've ever been around somebody, right, and they look totally normal and they act totally normal, and you're sitting down and you're having a nice conversation, and as you get deeper into that conversation, things start to go really, really strange. I mean, really bizarre, to the point where you think they're almost putting you on. Like they're fucking with you, just having a little bit of fun. And then you have that realization, holy shit, this person's crazy, like legitimate fucking crazy. This video is that encounter. This video is that situation. And you'll see what I mean. We're going to cue it up. Take a look.
I worked as a flight instructor at Embry-Riddle for 2.5 years after I graduated. And as young eagles, people from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, as newborn eagles, fly high in the sky and with an eagle eye see all that they can see from that altitude, and nobody can touch them and nobody can stop them. There's nothing that can hide from the piercing eye of an eagle.
Alright, so a few things to start with. He has an interesting way of speaking. He kind of reminds me, especially his mannerisms when he talks, of Nicolas Cage doing a character. Even his smile and his laugh are very Nicolas Cage. If he started screaming about the bees, that would fit in perfectly with how he's acting. Now, I looked into Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and it's actually a pretty prestigious private college where you go to learn to fly. They're located in a couple of states. I believe he went to the one in Florida based on what he's going to talk about in a little bit here. But so far, it seems okay. He seems a little different, but nothing too strange. But you'll see how quickly that's going to start to change over the course of this video. So let's continue.
When we're standing on the earth with our own two God-given feet and moving about, with the education that we receive at the university, we have eagle eyes. We can see all that there is to see, and nobody can really do anything to stop us, because we're worthy of that privilege.
Okay, so now we're starting to get a little creepy, but it's still so far nothing too bad. I mean, he seems enthusiastic about his education. He likes that he's a pilot. That was his profession. I can understand that.
I went to St. Augustine, Florida, where my soulmate was, who I had met online, actually. It turned out she was my soulmate, though, and was in St. Augustine, Florida. So I went down there, and I found out that as a newborn eagle, there's a lot to see for a newborn eagle. And she told me that she was sexually abused as a child. She told me when we were up north, because she was too afraid. to say anything about it to anybody down south where her abuser was, and apparently others who had threatened her. She told me about it, and I tried to deal with it using all of the applied knowledge that I had developed as a newborn eagle from Embry-Riddle.
Now, I have to say, I'm not exactly sure how flying a plane is going to help you in a situation where a kid's getting fucked in the ass. But I'll give him an A for effort. At least, it bothered him, and he felt he needed to do something. He wanted to help this woman. I mean, that's a noble thing. Again, it's a little awkward to bring up aviation and your fight against child abuse, but, I can't fault him for it. So, let's keep going.
And I even investigated the situation. I talked to him directly. I stayed clear of it, involvement with him, but I did interview him.
I didn't want to get involved, and so the best way of me doing that was to go and directly confront the person who was guilty of the molestation. Obviously.
She had become pregnant and had gone to the Alpha Omega Miracle Center in St. Augustine. And when it was Child Abuse Awareness Month, I picked up a t-shirt from a booth. I think it was actually from the Betty Griffin house, and wore it on the street corner. I decided to finally try and address this problem because it had gone too far. And you guys need to hear this, young eagles. And know that if you pray about this, God will do something and you'll see it happen. And then you'll know what it's like to fly in the sun.
And here's where the crazy starts. Again, he seems, when you're watching this, it's hard not to be compassionate towards the guy, right? I mean, he comes off as soft-spoken and very nice, and he is. He's a very nice guy. But this is where you start to see kind of his mental state. And remember, his story started with him talking about, going to college, being in aviation, meeting a woman online that he cared for, going to meet her in a different area of the state, and finding out she'd been through this trauma, and now he's trying to deal with it. And he's gonna deal with it all right. And it's from this point onward, again, with keeping that in mind of how this started, you'll see just the descent. It's just so quick. It's so quick. And in the course of the original video, I'll put links in the descriptions of all of these videos, but in the course of the original video, I'd say we're about a third to a halfway through. Again, I've edited for time, but about a third to a halfway through.
I love Jesus, and I wore the Alpha Omega or Betty Griffin house t-shirt which said "No excuse for abuse" on it, on the corner of on the pedestrian crossing island on the corner of US 1 and 312 in St. Augustine, Florida. And a policeman came up to me, stood next to me for a while with a big smile on his face after asking me what I was doing there, and I replied, protesting. And he asked me if there's anybody else protesting with me. I said no. He said, "What, are they over there across the street?" I said no. I told him there was nobody else. When he knew that, he stood there quietly with a big smile on his face for a while, and then 20 seconds maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds.
I don't know if any of you are familiar with the term crazed look in their eye, but that kind of applies to him right now. His eyes are darting all over the room. He can't really stay focused. He's starting to talk about how this policeman's interacting with him and being very specific about odd details, like how many seconds, specifically how many seconds this officer, was doing this. And this is really where you start to see kind of cracks in the facade of normality with God is Cool 2010.
They threatened to throw me off of the 312 bridge, and one of them said, "Welcome to the South," repeatedly, while they were, in order to scare me, I guess. I don't know what they were thinking. Obviously, who knows what people like that are thinking. But that's what they did to me, all because I was trying to address child abuse in St. Augustine.
Now, maybe this is just because I'm a northern boy, And I don't know how you guys do it down in the South, but generally when I'm interacting with the police, it's highly unusual for them to threaten to throw me off a bridge. That's not that's not the average protocol for interacting with your everyday citizen. You know, hi, how are you doing? You're going a little fast back there. Could you step out of the car so I could huck you off I-95's bridge? And I also like how he's starting to use the term they. It's no longer a policeman, it's them. You know, the ominous they, the nefarious they. This plays in, too, later on to his gang stalking fantasies. You can kind of see this narrative develop here. He's already talking about they, them. You'll see that language continued on as we proceed.
They committed perjury and threatened to throw me off of a bridge. It scared the life out of me. They threatened to kill me. The guy, he did like some psychological thing to take me down from my height, and by saying, you know, I guess that when he was repeating, he said, "Welcome to the South," and then he would pause and turn and talk to the other guys and turn back and like look at me and say, "Welcome to the South," and I didn't understand what he meant. And I guess he figured I didn't understand what he meant, so he turned around a third time after a while and said, "Oh, did I forget to tell you?" And then he paused and said, "Welcome to the South."
Well, I gotta say, you good old boys sure love to fuck with people in original ways. Welcome to the South. I'm sorry, what did you say? Welcome to the South. Now, there was two things that were interesting about that. I don't know if you caught it, but in the middle of that portion, that clip, he said they use psychological mind games, or psychological techniques, to talk me down from my height.
The guy, he did like some psychological thing to take me down from my height.
Now, he's already talking about a bridge, right? And he made it seem like they were going to throw him off the bridge. But if you caught it, he's saying they're talking him down. So you have to think of this through the goggles of reality, okay, and apply them to this situation. What's really going on? Well, here's a guy with this anti-molestation t-shirt up on a height on a bridge. Maybe he climbed up the railing. Maybe he's up on, some of the latest work. Who knows? And here come the cops to talk him down. Hey, don't jump. So I don't know what the welcome to the South thing is, but it's really weird. And you can start to see this has gotten fucking crazy. I mean, we've gone off on a tangent. This started out about him talking about his college, and we've moved from his college to a chick who was raped and molested to him, being stalked by policemen and random Southerners who keep saying, "Welcome to the South."
And then they arrested me, and then I knew something was up because I hadn't committed any crimes. And they put me in handcuffs and then turned my body and pointed my head directly at this bridge. They had wrongly handcuffed me, and they wanted me to know that they were gonna wrongly do something to me on that bridge. It was scary because my body would have been washed out by the ocean current that comes underneath that bridge on a stormy day like it was. There was a kind of a storm in the area, and the waves were high, and my body would have been sucked right out in the water. Nobody would have ever found it. Nobody would have known what happened to me. I'd also seen the swamps in the area, and I was worried that they could dispose of me that way if they chose to. It's very horrible. They're members of the police force. That's why this sexual abuse victim did not get any justice. She had told me previously, she said the police don't care, and when I tried to address the problem with the abuser himself, she got really scared. She shoved me out in the dark down the street and said, "Do you know what they're going to do to you?" And she glanced over at a swampy area when she said that, and I didn't understand that at the time either. But later, when they did what they did to me later on, then I understood what she was thinking when she said, "Do you know what?"
And that, by the way, was the edits I was talking about. He'll just randomly cut himself off. I'm not sure if he means to do it or if he's just not very good at editing, but it's always a religious picture, or at least it was in these earlier videos. But again, you can see this fantasy narrative kind of taking over for where I'm sure a real story existed. Maybe he really did meet a woman on the internet. Maybe he went to go meet her, and then something happened that got him on that bridge. Something happened that, got the police involved, that got onlookers surrounding him. So you're starting to see the image of a fragile individual. Again, he's not a bad guy. He seems like a very nice, affable, likable guy. But he also seems like somebody who really has an issue, a mental issue. I'm not sure what it is. I could speculate right now, but there's something going on. And it's pretty clear when you watch this video, and if you'd had the chance to watch his earlier videos.
Please help. Please pray. That will make things happen. Prayer works. Trust me. If you don't know that, you can trust me. A flight instructor from Embry-Riddle, I'm not going to lie to you. If you pray and believe, God will intervene and do something about all of these victims in St. Augustine. Pray and believe, God will intervene and do something about all of these victims in St. Augustine and everywhere else who are being victimized not only by abusers, people in the community, but people on the police force. Threatened and living in fear. They need our presence. They need us to fly. Please, please help and pray. They're threatening people. By and be there and observe. They need us to be observers and to pray.
And so now you have a better idea of God is Cool 2010. Again, this was one of his earlier videos. I was lucky to be able to get it. There are a few mirrors out there too. So there's a potential that he had an account before the 2010 one and these were saved, or maybe he just likes to back up his stuff. I'm not 100% sure. But we have an image emerging basically from that introduction video. Alright, it's very clear that this guy is what you would call a vulnerable adult. He has something going on with him mentally. That's pretty obvious. There's a heavy emphasis on religion with him, and on being persecuted, and on trying to right wrongs that are being covered up by some kind of a conspiracy that's out to hurt or slander the supposed victim. So, it would have been bad enough if it had been left like that. I'm not sure what his life would have been like, but he was clean cut. He looked okay, fairly okay, but who knows? The point is, it's around this time, it seems, and again, God, I really wish the account hadn't closed, because I'd be able to lay this out a little better, but it's around this time that he gets introduced to gang stalking, and suddenly all these delusions he has, all these conspiracies that are imagined in his mind are now made valid, okay? That's extraordinarily dangerous when you think about it. Imagine a psychotic or a schizophrenic who has been told or medicated throughout their entire lives that what they think is real is actually not real, that they're sick in the head. And then one day, some asshole comes along and says, "Oh no, man, you don't need to take those pills. You're right. There is a conspiracy out there. You're right. They are trying to get you." Think of how fucking damaging that is. And that's what these gang-stalking dipshits have essentially done to him. They've ruined this guy's life. The people that fed him this shit have ruined his life. They have allowed him to construct a completely impenetrable fantasy, and he's retreated within it. All right, and I know that there are people that legitimately believe in this gang-stalking stuff, but it's bullshit. It's bullshit. A reasonable approach to looking at it, it's just, there is such a thing in life as happenstance, as serendipity, as coincidence. Okay, shit happens. That's just life. Trying to assign some deeper meaning to it because you were late to work, or because you overheard somebody make a joke about you, or because your phone's acting up. You know, creating this idea that those aren't random occurrences, that there's somebody masterminding those whose sole purpose is to make you go insane. Well, these assholes fed him this. Okay, this mentally unstable individual, and he literally went insane. So I'm going to show you another video now. This is a little farther on. He seems to move back and forth, and it's hard to place this one because this is from a mirrored account, but you can see he looks a little more haggard, and the things he's going to talk about are similar to what he talked about in that first video, but they become more extreme, more pronounced. Okay, now it's not just a random police officer or onlookers. Now it's a real they, right? He has a whole conspiracy ready, and it involves everybody in his neighborhood.
Hello, my name is Brian Connors. I live in Pittsburgh, and I'm constantly being harassed by neighbors, people on the police force, and people who are using air raid sirens as well when I go to the second story of my house.
So already you can see that he looks different. His beard's unkempt, he looks a little bit frazzled, and he's really starting to kind of put together this story of harassment. I mean, it's not just the police, it's his neighbors. And they're going as far as blasting air raid sirens at him to try to drive him crazy, to harass him for no good reason.
a person who lives right across the street from my backyard pointed a laser sight for a rifle at me while I was sitting in a lawn chair in the backyard, threatening my life, threatening to shoot me, because I don't know what reason he had for it. I was watching, the neighbors had some kids playing in their yard, and there was a little black girl over there and said something that had happened was child abuse because somebody was just going nuts and disciplining one of the children for no reason. And I saw that it was crazy, so I said, yeah, that's child abuse, because I didn't want her to be told that she was wrong and to believe that.
And so here you can see another reoccurring theme of child abuse, specifically child abuse. It seems to be something that is always at the heart of this harassment he's facing, and seems to be the impetus that sets off, this gang stalking mentality of the neighborhood and the police force and all these other people involved.
And so this guy, pointed this laser sight at me from the middle of his living room window. The night before, the gunshots had been fired, so I knew that he meant, I'm pointing a gun at you, and it was a powerful sight, like the kind that you would use for a rifle, not a little toy.
Here again we see another theme that seems to be common in a lot of his videos, which is being threatened with death. It's not just the child abuse that he seems to stumble upon wherever he is, be it in Florida or Pittsburgh. It's the threat of bodily harm, specifically murder. I mean, he's saying that his neighbors are threatening to murder him, and the police refuse to do anything about it because they're in on it.
Can anybody help? I'm being harassed and threatened in Pittsburgh. The local police are not only not taking reports, but are involved in the harassment. And I just need anybody who can, understand.
Sadly, it looks like he didn't get anybody who understood. What he got instead were people who, put forward this idea of gang stalking. They probably saw his videos and thought, oh my god, it's another victim of this horrible oppression that Americans are suffering at the hands of some network of people who are dedicated to screwing with middle-class citizens. Now, what makes this really tragic, especially in his case, is as you watch the videos, as they progress, he gets more haggard in his appearance. He becomes, just disoriented and disheveled. He starts talking more and more about the harassment he's facing. But he eventually ends up in a psychiatric ward. That's where these next couple of videos come from. That's the end result of feeding people this kind of shit. Here's this poor son of a bitch who has something wrong with him, who really is fucked up, but he's a nice guy, and maybe if he got treatment, he'd be okay. Instead, he got these pricks who fed him this conspiracy shit, and it fucked his life up so bad he ended up in the nut hatch. Alright, he's in the loony bin right now. When I talked earlier about why his account might have been closed, this might be a reason. He was making videos in the insane asylum, the psychiatric ward of the hospital he's at. Now, it wouldn't be too unreasonable to suspect that a doctor watched some of these videos and thought, shit, this isn't helping his treatment. He's just, falling farther into his own delusion. So we've got to stop letting him have this outlet and start having him, open up in therapy. Again, that's speculation, but it seems reasonable. So here he starts, this poor fucking sap who has these problems, and he gets manipulated. He gets abused, legitimately abused, by these assholes who are putting forward this ridiculous notion of gang stalking. And this is the end result. This is what happens when you feed a mentally unstable person huge lines of bullshit like gang stalking.
Hello, my name is Brian, and I'm also a victim of organized harassment. Here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, they have locked me up in a psych ward, Western Psychiatric Institute of the University of Pittsburgh, I think it's called, or Western Psych for short. The way they did that was by basically, after they harassed me for a number of years, got me sensitized to certain sounds, then a couple guys threatened to shoot me. And I tried to report it to the police at that point because the guys threatened to shoot me, but the local police would not take a report on it. And they were trained not to. And then after he wouldn't take the report on it, another guy saw me standing out in my front yard And so he went inside his house, came back out with a bright red shirt that he had just put on inside his house, and when he was in there, and he came right back out with this bright red shirt and goes like this to me, and and then goes like that and starts going like that, and obvious, so now
And so now he finds himself in this institute, in this psychiatric ward. And that's not because he's crazy. No, this is just an extension now of this vast conspiracy of this gang stalking. All the neighbors were in on it. All the police were in on it. You can see the frustration he feels in this video. You can just see it. It's palpable. He's obviously really fucked up about this. He really believes this is happening. Well, now it's not just, all these outside agencies. Now the shrinks are involved in it too. Now the people trying to give him help are involved in it.
Hello, I just watched your whole video. You are right. Do not, and I'm telling you so that you know it from somebody else, never trust a psychiatrist or a psychologist, because they're not doctors, first of all, but they let people think that they are. They do not have PhDs. They do not have the abbreviation doctor in front of their names, but they let people believe that they do, and they basically are just kids that never learn to be honest. They are immature liars. Don't ever talk to them. But if you need somebody to talk to, you know who you can. Well, you can talk to your friends on YouTube here.
And what great friends they are. They took a mentally unstable individual, fed him a conspiracy-laden bullshit soup, and then watched as his life deteriorated before them. Just take a look at this. You can see the progression of his decline. It's evident physically on him. Now, if his account hadn't been closed, there were so many more videos that pointed out, his interaction with people in the gang stalking community. He had some where he was walking around his apartment talking about his food being tampered with because he saw a video of somebody explaining that they tamper with your food. And so he was freaked out and, how do they do that? And what can I do to prevent it? And, do I need to seal everything up? There were other videos talking about being followed and what cars to look out for. These are all classic pieces of the gang stalking theory. The idea that they color coordinate their vehicles to harass you on the road, and that people will do subtle things, subtle but vague enough that it will drive you crazy and nobody will believe you. Like that first story he was talking about, welcome to the South, before he really got into the whole gang stalking thing. Well, they'd say, oh, well, of course they're going to do that to you because it sounds so ridiculous, who would ever believe it? But the sole objective is to drive you crazy. They want to listen in and ruin your life in any way they can. Bug your phones, move your furniture when you're not in your apartment, follow you while you shop, shout things out in a crowd. It's this idea poisoned him. They literally drove him insane. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't completely stable to begin with, obviously not, but they drove him over the edge. And so you can see the end result. This is the end result of these people and their actions and their community. This is what this kind of crap does to somebody. And it's just ridiculous. God is Cool 2010 is a classic example of somebody who was unbalanced to begin with and who was drove to an extreme by the crap he read on the internet and by the interaction he had with people on YouTube. Go and, enter it into a YouTube search. Just take a look at the videos that are out there for gang stalking and be amazed at how crazy these people are. Now, they're not crazy like he is. He's legitimately crazy, and that's why this was so damaging to him. These other people, they're just conspiracy nuts. And to them it might not be a big deal, or it might just be a pastime, or, some intricate fantasy. But at the end of the day, they can function normally. To this guy, it wasn't a fantasy. To this guy, it was his fucking life, and his life is ruined because of it.